Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Jewish Community of Sedona and the Verde Valley. I'm Rabbi Alicia Magal, and we are here to celebrate the life of David Frazer, David ben Yaakov. At the cemetery in Sedona, we just had a brief graveside service. We said Kaddish, and we were very honoring of the soul of the departed. And we want to get together and tell stories and share memories and be a mishpacha, which is an extended family. So that's why we've brought you here to a more comfortable place where people from far away could also be part of it and also have a moment to speak. But to begin right now, let's call on David's sons, Dov and Douglas. Dov, you want to start? Please come up to the podium. And many of you will have a chance to speak.
Testing. We gather today to remember and celebrate the life of my father, David Frazer, a loving husband, devoted father, mentor, and a man of many gifts. Dad was the son of John Frazer and Hazel Hartz in Detroit, Michigan. As a child, he was described as sweet and docile, clinging to his mother's skirt. That didn't last very long. Yet he was also mischievous. Every Sunday, he and his sister Frida would engage in pillow fights until their father would come in and give them the strap. Despite this, every Sunday they repeated the same shenanigans. In high school, one of his first jobs was driving an ice cream truck. Maybe that's where he developed his love of ice cream. Throughout his life, he would stop for ice cream almost everywhere he went and had it for dessert almost every night. Before World War II, the family had a maid, and Dave and Frida had no chores at all. When the maid was no longer employed, the young Frazers were asked to wash dishes at night. David and Frida would pretend they were sick or stay in the bathroom to get out of having to do anything. Dad went on to study at the University of Michigan, where he served as resident advisor and met our mother, Joan Frazer. She invited him to a Girls Ask Boy formal, and that's where it all began. They married in 1953 and were together for 46 years until Joan's passing in 1999. In 2002, David remarried. He and Marilyn Leventhal were together for 15 years, during which time they moved to the Maravilla Independent Living Village, where their close friends Toba and Stu Crystal were living. In later years, he shared 4 very happy years at Maravilla with Linda Mendel. These relationships show a man who loved deeply and was loved in return. David was a great husband and father. He supported Joan's career and supported Svi and I in every way. He firmly believed in a strong work ethic and instilled in us that nothing in life is free. He taught us not to feel entitled, but to earn our place. He took great pride in our accomplishments. He was exceptionally proud that Svi was elected village president of Fox Point and that I was elected as a city councillor for Waverley Council in Australia. David once said that he named his children to be presidents. Dad, I'm sorry that neither of us became president of the United States, but I'm working really hard to get my name on a plaque. Dad also loved to play. I remember the bright orange ping pong table at our house in Arcadia, where Dad patiently taught Svi and I how to be winning ping pong players. He continued playing table tennis into his 90s and gave his grandson a run for their money when he played with him. Tennis was a lifelong passion for Dad. He played most of his adult life, waking before dawn to play doubles with his friends, and kept it up into his 80s. He coached both of us when we were children in Little League, in baseball, and he was always ready to catch a ball or throw to us. He started a family group called Indian Guides, where Svi and I learned outdoor skills and went on camping trips. He supported both of us during our years in Boy Scouts, where Svi and I worked hard to become Eagle Scouts. When his grandson Nathan and Jacob were playing every sport on earth, he would fly out to Milwaukee to watch them play. When David and Joan moved to Phoenix in 1962, they befriended the Adam and Crystal families. We celebrated all the Jewish holidays with them and became lifelong friends. Larry Adams still thinks of me as Temple Tommy. The kids would put on a play after every event, and as the youngest child, I was relegated to the lamest role every time. I'm honored that Scott Crystal and Bobby Adam are here to represent the Crystals and Adams. When it came time to think about college, David took Svi and I on college tours together, helping us to see the possibilities and decide where we wanted to apply. He supported us wholeheartedly in attending whichever college we could get into. He believed that we could achieve anything we set our minds to. Dad was a lover of Southwest and contemporary art. often attending student art shows and purchasing an artist's first piece. Many of these works adorned the beautiful Sedona house he built with my mother. When Joan passed, David set up the Joan Frazer Memorial Ward to promote Jewish art for ASU students. Later in life, he traveled to Australia to attend my wedding to Roslyn and later to Ben's bar mitzvah. He organized family trips to Israel and to the Caribbean for Svi and my families, along with Morris and Frida, so we could all spend time together. David loved to discuss state and local politics. He followed issues closely, caring deeply about ethics, fairness, and justice. He devoted years to helping his client and friend, Max Dunlap, who was wrongly convicted. Dad knew the law, and he understood when the media and legal system were perpetrating a miscarriage of justice, and we're honored that some of Max Dunlap's children are here with us today. In his final years, living at Enliven Memory Care, Dad was blessed to have long-standing caregivers who loved him and looked after him, particularly Manfred, Angie, and Kayla. Their care and that of the entire staff made those final years happy and dignified. Today, we feel his absence, but we also feel profound gratitude for having had him in our life. Thank you, Dad, for being the best father you could be. Thank you for the memories, the lessons, and the love. We will miss you, and we will honor you in how we live. Rest in peace, knowing that our legacy lives on in us.
Thank you for those memories. Now I call on Doug, Hebrew name Tzvi, to give another aspect of David's life.
Thank you all for being here and for honoring David and sharing with us and those on Zoom your memories. I'm going to cover some of David's professional and community activities. David did not take an LSAT. One of his undergraduate professors at the University of Michigan thought he'd be a good lawyer, and so he walked over to the registrar and registered for law school. But it was a good choice, and he was a good law student, and he enjoyed it. After law school, he clerked for Judge Charles Simons on the on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, and that was followed by 5 years of the U.S. Department of Justice Tax Division, and I was born during that period of time in Washington, D.C. Now, just coincidentally, his oldest son went to law school and clerked for a judge on the Circuit Court of Appeals, and then went to the U.S. Department of Justice Tax Division, and then had our first son in Washington, D.C. Karen, my wife, thinks that is a chip off the old block. I think it's mere coincidence. The hospital I was born, Doctors Hospital, no longer exists. It is now the Farragut North Metro Station. No shrine. But the hospital Nathan was born in, Sibley, is still active and running. A New York white Jew law firm called Lord Day and Lord hired David from the Justice Department after they faced him in court and were so impressed they offered him a job. So we moved to New York City, and that's where my younger brother, Tom, Dove, was born. Then the family decided to move west and chose Phoenix, and David joined the law firm of Schimmel, Hill, Kleindienst, and Bishop, followed by many years at Lewis and Roca. At Lewis and Roca, David recruited Yale Goldberg, here, who is with us today, and Amy Gittler, who is with us today. And they either practiced together or stayed in touch till this day. In 1989, David founded with Jim Ryan and Yale Goldberg, Frazer, Ryan, and Goldberg, which is still a well-established and active firm in Phoenix, and we are honored today to have Jim Ryan with us as well. With regard to community activities, they were many. This is something David did not because it was just second nature. This was just something he did, was be involved in the community and to assume leadership roles. He was active In the Phoenix Jewish Federation, he was president of the JCC, he was president of the Federation, he was active in the cancer support community, the National Council of Christians and Jews, Anytown, USA, the Symphony, the Red Rock Music Festival. There were many organizations that he felt passionate about and was involved in. And some of those individuals are here with us, and we thank them for coming. David also liked to write and argue and share his opinions, but not in a mean way. He was very easy to talk to, even though you might disagree with him. He loved writing articles and letters to the editor. He won an award from the Bar Association, that is the American Bar Association, called the Golden Gavel for an article that he authored. And he also wrote a book in his retirement called Ethical Meltdown, concerning the lack of recognition of conflicts of interest that he saw in many aspects of life. In 2024, just last November, he was inducted into the Maricopa County Bar Association Hall of Fame, thanks to the nomination of his firm and his colleagues at Frazer, Ryan, and Goldberg. And I was honored to accept the award on his behalf with 3 tables from the firm present. There's more I could say, but I will end now. And again, thank you all for coming, and thank you all for being here on the remote platform.
Thank you. We really would love to hear from Frida, his loving sister. There's a handrail over there.
I'm so nice to see you all here today. I'm just going to talk about a few personal things in David's early life, starting with, of course, we're from Detroit, and we lived in a large Christian community in our early years. And at the time, what I remember celebrating, I'm mentioning this because we're in a synagogue, what I remember celebrating was Hanukkah. And this was my idea of Hanukkah. I insisted that we all hang our stockings up on the mantle and fill with gifts. And then we get I never knew anything about one gift one day for Hanukkah. We got a whole bunch of presents, and that was Hanukkah presents. And mainly I was insisting on the hanging the stocks because all of my friends had Christmas trees. Anyway, that was just the early time. Then at a later time, the time when David spent the most part of his life, as from elementary school right through college, was in a place called,
Hard to figure out where.
I should know better, a place called Russell Woods, where we lived all the way through our college years. And we had a wonderful life there. We lived in a home, in a lovely home, but the best part of it was that it was filled with love, with music, with friends, and with parties. And what David and I both learned from my parents' welcoming attitudes, we learned what hospitality looks like. And we both always remembered that. And it showed in the way David lived his life, too, David and Joan. At the time, I think David got his interest in sports. My father was the only father on the block that would come out in the street almost every night with David and his friends and play catch. And the other part of the sports story was that in our house it was always at least 3 games going on at the same time. 2 or 3 radios going with football and baseball, and then later television. So that's how David got to be really sports-minded. Then, of course, you've heard a lot about his college years. And what I'm going to just mention now is what happened toward the end of his life. Knowing that David was unable to remember much of his life or his career, his law career, I decided that I didn't want him to be in this facility and only know himself as David Frazer, who couldn't remember his life or his career. So at least twice in the last year, I went through his whole law career with him. And he listened very intently and with interest, great interest. And I started, it wasn't the beginning of his career, but I started with his time as a trial lawyer for the Justice Department. What I didn't mention to him was that the way he left the Justice Department, he won a very big case against one of the largest, most prestigious firms in New York. And very shortly after, it was such a big win, they invited him to join their firm. So David and Joan lived in New York for a few years until he decided that he didn't want to raise the family there, and he moved to Phoenix. So other than that, I went through all of his career and all of his law firms that he had been with, and especially the two very large firms in Phoenix. And then I talked about his starting his own firm with his good friends Yale Goldberg and Jim Ryan, and I told him that his name was still on the door. And then in more recent times, I went over with him the great honor that he received this year. I told him about how he had been elected to the Maricopa County Hall of Fame, Bar Association Hall of Fame, and he does have he had a plaque to show it. And I went over that with him, and he seemed to enjoy hearing about that. So I'll just say that whatever David didn't remember, we, meaning his good friends and his law friends and his partners, and especially his family, we will remember for him forever.
Thank you. Oh boy. Frida, you are a model for all of us to be that clear and caring and loving and expressive at your age. It's just beautiful. Karen Shapiro, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Hi, for those who don't know me, I'm Karen. I'm Svi's wife. I don't have the great pleasure of going as far back with David as Frida, but I am blessed because I go back with David for over 40 years. I've had the great pleasure and privilege to be part of David's life for going on 5 decades now. He treated me just like his own daughter and an integral part of the Frazer family. And he and Joan extended that same warmth and generosity to the entire Shapiro family. Svi and I were never torn over when to spend holidays like Thanksgiving and Passover in Milwaukee or Phoenix, because for more often than not, we all gathered together in one city or the other. Despite the physical distance, David was a constant presence in the life of his grandchildren, our sons, Nathan and Jacob, too. He didn't just show up for the milestone events like bar mitzvahs and college graduations. Every few months, David just would pop into Milwaukee for a few days. One might think he was coming for his fix of Kopp's frozen custard, his favorite custard on the planet. But in actuality, he really wanted to be with grandsons and watch them in their many activities, whether it be violin recitals and music concerts, and of course, most importantly, sporting events, from soccer to Little League to lacrosse to ice hockey. Now, who from Arizona voluntarily shows up to Wisconsin in January and February? That would be David. I recall him happily sitting in bleachers, all dressed up in his warmest parka, a hat, scarf, and gloves, cheering loudly in delight anytime one of the grandkids or a teammate scored a goal. David taught us how to show up for the good times and the bad times, and he showed us so much more beyond that. He modeled love without condition. I will miss him deeply. May he rest in peace.
Beautiful, thank you. Now we want to hear from David's law colleagues. First, Jim Ryan. Jim, you want to come up? Then will be Amy and then Yale, okay?
Thank you. It's an honor to be up here speaking to you. I don't have any notes because it was only a minute before we sat down that Doug told me I was on for 2 minutes. And I thought, well, I've always been told I have the right to remain silent. I just don't have the ability. So being Irish, he gave me 2 minutes. I'm going to save those till later, okay? So in any event, there's so many memories of Dave I'm trying to boil down, but Frazer Ryan Goldberg was born out of the ashes of a prior law firm I had called Ryan McCann Wooten. We'd started that in 1886 when real estate was booming in Phoenix. I had a 10,000 square foot office, 8 other lawyers that did nothing but real estate. I did my estate planning and estate administration and business work. And by the summer of 1989, there was no work. I hired a bankruptcy lawyer and all the rest of the lawyers left. I ran into Yale Goldberg in the summer of 1989 at a fast food place, a Chicken Loco Poco, whatever that thing was. And he said that Dave was thinking about leaving Lewis and Roca. Now let me back up. I started practicing law in 1974, and from the outset, I knew that David Frazer was a rock star.
Really?
He was one of 2, maybe 3, absolutely praised and recognized and worshiped leaders in the estate planning community. I wanted to be like Dave. So fast forward, I developed my practice. Summer of 1989, it was in shambles. I meet Yale that I'd known along the way, and Yale, if you only know him for 5 minutes, he's your best friend. He's one of the most loving and caring guys, and I treasure him as a friend and a partner. And anyway, he said Dave was looking to leave, and I thought, holy moly, wouldn't that be awesome? Let me back up, because I'd been in law firms that were primarily involved in real estate for years. And you know, real estate in Phoenix is like a roller coaster ride. And I remembered when I told my father I was going to go to law school, he said, son, death and taxes, you'll never run out of work. And so I thought, okay, the whole real estate law firm gig wasn't working too well. Let's start a tax boutique firm. So I called Dave, met him at the Ritz-Carlton for breakfast, and shared with him what I was hoping we could build together, because he was the tent pole in estate planning lawyers in Phoenix. He was the guy. And he was unhappy that Lewis and Roca was going through tough times and changed some of their comp structure, and so he was open. So we said we need to include Yale, because he was one of the other rock stars in the tax world, in the tax controversy. He knew every accountant in the state, and they all wanted to send their troubled clients to Yale to solve. So it was like, how can we go wrong, the 3 of us? So September 1st of 1989, we launched Frazer Ryan and Goldberg. We had one additional associate that I'd hired doing the bankruptcy. And right after we started the firm, what did Yale do? He ran across the country with a group, and I'm thinking, I'm worried about this guy. He runs, there's cars and planes and trains and stuff. But in any event, that was another story. So I had the honor and blessing of being able to practice law with Dave Frazer for 16 years. He was the moral compass of our firm. He was the tent pole of growing the firm. He set the standard. Last night I sent out a long email to our firm to share with him the history of Dave and the background of how he set the tone for how our law firm would operate, unlike many other law firms. And what Dave and I agreed we should put on the phones of every one of the phones on the desks of the people that worked in our firm was, the clients don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. David set the standard for all of us to practice law ethically, to care about the clients more than ourselves, to take it easy on each other when we work together and not get too caught up in the little petty things and to think bigger. Dave was a role model for me. He was an answer to prayer. I'm blessed to have had the honor, excuse me, to practice law with him. And I didn't want to be here on a day like this because I was hoping Dave would live forever. In any event, you all know him. I don't need to tell you what a phenomenal man he was. But thank you for listening to me.
Thank
Now,
you.
can I use the 2 minutes? No, just kidding.
Very full and rich 2 minutes, yes. Amy Gittler, would you like to say a few words, please?
Good afternoon. I'm really honored to have been offered this opportunity. David was probably the most important person in my legal career. Exactly 49 years ago this month, David interviewed me in law school at Northwestern for Lewis and Rocha. He interviewed me with one of his partners who had long, bushy hair. And I knew when I walked in that there was a dichotomy sitting right in front of me and a delicate balance. It was Andy Gordon and David Frazer, for those of you who know Andy. They took a bet on me. They invited me out, and I got an offer at Lewis and Rocha. And I had the joy and pleasure of working with David for about 2.5 years while I was at Lewis and Rocha. And even more importantly, Joan and David took me under their wing. I moved out here knowing no one. I had never been here before. They invited me to share all the Jewish holidays with them, and they were really my family when I first moved to Phoenix. And I feel so blessed to have gotten to know the Frazer family and to have shared those holidays with them. I then left, went out and did public interest law, then went out on my own. And then one day, about 20 years later, I got a phone call from Yale, because Yale and I had started at Lewis and Rocha together, and he asked me if I knew an employment lawyer who might be interested in joining Frazer, Ryan, Goldberg, and Arnold. And I said, I did, and it was me. And so fast forward 20 years later, and I had the pleasure and the real honor of working with David once again in my career. And for about 5 minutes, the firm's name was Frazer, Ryan, Goldberg, Arnold, and Gittler. I always say I left because they couldn't fit my last name on the checks, so I had to leave. But I left for another law firm. But it was truly an honor, and we did remain friends forever throughout that entire time period. My children's memory of Joan is the last time we visited with her. She sat on the floor playing with my children at the Sedona house. And she was just so much present and so much a part of them. And I asked my son if he remembered it, and he said yes, he did. He remembered the big windows of that Sedona house. The one other thing is that we feel David in our presence every day, because when David was downsizing some of his art collections, we were the fortunate to get 3 of his pieces. So for those of you who wonder where that long, thin, naked sculpture is, it's in our house, along with a few other art pieces. And so we have David in our presence every day. And we just adored both Joan and David and feel so blessed to have known them and for them to have been a part of their lives. And for me to have had David in my career not once but twice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Yale, would you like to offer some words as well? Yale Goldberg.
Thank you, Doug and Tom, for allowing us to be part of this service. I actually met Dave 50 years ago, Memorial Day, 1977. He came to Washington to hire an additional tax attorney at Lewis and Roca. I came back for interviews, much like Amy, and neither of us screwed things up. And lo and behold, on Labor Day, 1977, started with Lewis and Roca. And I don't know how I got an affinity to Reader's Digest, but I did. At that time, the airplanes would have the free magazines, Discovery Magazine, Science, but Reader's Digest was there. And the one article that was in every month was my most unforgettable person ever. And within a couple of months of working with David, and this recurs every year, I told myself, was reminded myself that he was the most memorable, remarkable person I ever met. And I just did all the things that Dave, Jim, and Doug, and Tom, and Frida, and Karen said. Just such a remarkable person, and will always be unforgettable. And I want to transition a little bit, because Dave so often got, in the most positive, loving ways, he was reminded people of Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers was honored to be one of the most unforgettable people at the Reader's Digest thing, and they sold some of the criteria, just someone who enriched the lives of others. David was the best listener in the world. I mean, there were so many reasons why Dave was my most unforgettable character. Going forward, when my wife and I would visit Dave at Maravilla, he was the Prince of Maravilla. And what occurred to me is that so much of the time people that have memory issues, they get frustrated. They want to try so hard to communicate, to share their thoughts and to understand things. But David just had that gracious smile and laugh that he had his entire life. And, we were all so lucky to have him. And probably the most remarkable years for me were the years when we practiced with Frazer, Ryan Goldberg, and Jim did such a good job of saying how much Dave meant to everyone there. And it just wasn't the attorneys. I mean, Dave was beloved by everyone, and, just reminded everyone of a life well lived and just a righteous, honest, loving life. He had a great smile. And we were just so blessed, Jim, we were so lucky to have the wisdom, the kindness, the patience. Luckily, Dave and Jim were great managers of the firm. I think they realized it wasn't necessarily a strong point of mine, and I just feel so blessed and lucky. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Dave. Jamie, same with you. So thank you for listening, and it was just an honor to have known Dave all those years.
Thank you for giving us your perspective. Friend of the family, Carrie Dunlap, would you like to come up here? Carrie?
Okay. I'm the youngest daughter of Max Dunlap. Okay, I'll get it. Hang on. Okay. Dave Frazer was monumental in my father's life. I don't know that without Dave, things, as hard as we tried to get my dad freed, Dave was the one friend and person that never let my dad down, ever, ever. And so I went on a lot of excursions with Dave, and we were always doing, at the time I was young and I didn't understand the relevance of it, but we would go together and we would always be filming characters in the Bowles assassination, in the bombing, and we would go and we would do a video of their part of it, or however I want to say that. He was instrumental in carrying forth trying to get my dad freed out of prison. It didn't happen, but I want you all to know that because of my help from Dave and perseverance with my beautiful family, we have taken steps and we are still working on, as we speak, there is a documentary. I started with the help of my family with the podcast, and we did that. And then we told the story of which Dave is hugely responsible for so much of the data, and anyway, we just kept going with it, and now we're into a documentary. And the documentary literally just 2 weeks ago went out for marketing. They're a huge company. This isn't personal, something we did. This is a huge production company that, through my tenacity and through my connections in my horse community, by the way, I'm just a horse trainer, I'm no Hollywood anything, we just didn't give up, and we now have it furthered more into a documentary. It is now being offered to the major networks. We have now been approached by CNN and Peacock and one more, but I'm not exactly sure which one it is, so I'm not going to say. But anyway, I'm hoping that with everything we've done with the help of Dave Frazer, that he will obviously be a huge part of the documentary. Just so you know, we have lots of film. And because of Dave Frazer, the only interview ever taken of my father, well, in all the years he was in prison, because I think it was 16 years or how long, forever before, and he passed away in prison, is because of Dave Frazer. He got the interview of my dad. And so when I actually showed the producer that I had, thanks to Yale Goldberg, and Doug, and Dove, and everybody, I don't know. Anyway, they said that that is probably the selling point of the whole story. So just want to say, love Dave with all my heart, my family, my dad, I'm sure was there to guide him into heaven. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for letting me speak.
Thank you for sharing that, Carrie. From the cancer support community, I'd like to invite Ann Reuter to come up and offer some words. Ann. Judy. Oh. So reintroduce yourself then.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us today. I'm Julie Dunnigan with the Cancer Support Community of Arizona, and David was such an instrumental part of our organization and our community. After he lost his wife to cancer, Joan, as you all know, he really decided to use that experience and that tragedy and transform that into a way to give back to others, because he really understood and believed that no one should face cancer alone. And so by always being there and being present, to give back to others and to give back to other families, cancer survivors and people going through their journey, he really helped us ensure that nobody has to face this journey alone, whether they're going through it in the moment or they've lost someone to this terrible disease. He was such an instrumental part of our community that he was always present. Whenever we had an event, he was there. Whenever we had anything that we needed, he was always willing to come and lend a hand, and was so generous with his time as well, always wanting to give back and making sure that he supported this work and supported this journey for his family. And Dov, you mentioned wanting to have a plaque one day in your name, and you know, David did that by having his name on a building. That's how instrumental he was for our organization and our community, and I just wanted to thank him and the family for that support and always being part of our lives and our community, so much so that he even was the inaugural member of our Legacy Giving Society. So thank you so much to the Frazer family.
Thank you. So we know that David was not only interested in philanthropy, but also the arts and music. And to represent the Red Rock Music Festival, I invite Moshe Buchspan to come up and share from his point of view. Moshe, and your wife.
And my wife.
Okay.
Thank you for having me here and say a few words. So my name is Moshe Buchspan, and in 2004 I was introduced to David by Eric Mendelson, who is a member of this community, JCSVV. David became a friend and a supporter of the Red Rocks Music Festival. For over 15 years, David attended most of the festival concerts and graciously hosted our musicians. He particularly enjoyed the Winter Chamber Music Institute, where advanced students from around the world participated. We shared many meals, ending with his favorite dessert, key lime pie. And yes, his ice cream was chocolate mint. I remember that, chocolate mint. We played ping pong, and he was quite good at it. David was like family to me and my wife, Judy. He will be greatly missed. May his memory be of blessing. And my wife would like to add a few words.
I'm Judy, and my connection to David Frazer goes back when I was about 23, and my mother told me about a Jewish dating service, Contacts and Connections, and that's how I met Joan. And so I wasn't emotionally mature maybe at that time, and I didn't meet my match then. I met him later. And just some happy memories that I have of David. I remember he loved key lime pie. And so when we came to visit him, I would make him key lime pie and bring it for him, and he would be delighted. And he would talk to Moshe sometimes and say, I still have some pie left. I'm eating a slice a day. But he was a gentle man. He loved to listen. He was a great listener. I'm a retired teacher, and he used to listen to, things that I'd share, experiences with my students, and we'd laugh and whatever, and he'll be greatly missed. He was a very special person.
A mensch. Thank you. Is there anyone else here in the sanctuary who would like to speak? Please come up and introduce yourself and come to the podium. There's a handrail right over there.
Hello, I'm Jerry Hirsch. I think I know most of you. I hadn't anticipated to speak. I didn't even know whether I was able to be here today, but I'm thrilled and pretty pleased that I am. Apparently, besides his family, I think I knew David before anybody else in this room. Yale said he met David in 1975. I joined Lewis and Roca in late 1972, and very shortly after that, Dave joined Lewis and Roca, our firm. And I'm here to say two aspects of David. Number one, his absolute commitment to do whatever he decided to do, he was all in. Everything he did. And I'll just mention some things that you may not know. First of all, when he joined Lewis and Roca, when anybody joined our firm, and probably any firm, they have something called a new matter slip that they circulate with the new client that this new lawyer has brought in. You would not believe the number of new matter slips that came during that month Every day there were 7 of them. And I had the opportunity to meet some of his clients. And there was one thing they all said about him, and that was his commitment, his caring, just like somebody here said. And this goes through a whole lot of things. I had a very, very bad divorce when I was 48 years old. My kids wanted to help me out. I went through a bunch of stuff. So I became 50 years old, and they wanted to do something for me. And they decided they would have a surprise birthday party for me. And guess where they had that birthday party? In Dave Frazer's home. He was gone, and he let all my kids take over the house just to have my birthday party. David and I became not only just friends, but our political philosophies that have not been really mentioned here became a major part of our lives. We both happened to be Jewish conservatives, which in those days was like nobody ever heard of a Jewish conservative. And we were the 2 token Republicans. Throughout the time, we would get belted by all the Democrats. Of course, today, I think he would turn over in his grave to see what a Republican looks like. David got me involved in Camp Anytown. I don't know what happened to Camp Anytown, but it was the most wonderful thing in the world. And when he got involved in something, he really got involved. And this was a program where kids in various colors and various faiths all came together for a week or 2 to get to know what the other side, the other people were all about. And David was so committed to that. The young lady mentioned about his commitment to Max Dunlap. And I will tell you, I will sit here and tell you, I know that David lost a bunch of clients, a bunch of friends, a lot of credibility. Didn't mean anything to him. When he went to do something, he did it, and he was unwavering in his support for Max Dunlap, just like he was unwavering for his support for my friendship. I left Lewis and Roca early on, decided to go into business. I had no clue about business. Decided to go into real estate business. Didn't know anything about it. David was among my very first investors. He had faith in me. He was also a big, one of the trustees of the Flynn Foundation. That became a big commitment. He got the Flynn Foundation involved in what I did, and thankfully it all worked out financially. But I've got to stand here and tell you that he was a major reason. His faith in me was a major reason to whatever success I ever had in the real estate business and the success I had future because of my the resources I was able to get in the real estate business. And so I'm saying here, and I'll finish this, and didn't mean to take up that much of your time, that to have a person of that kind of commitment, the commitment to believe in something and do it is relatively unique in our society. But David was one of those people. From the time I ever met him until the last time I met him, I had lunch with him in Scottsdale at the time. He was in that independent living group a few years ago. He always was committed, and he always was outspoken. His book about ethics, all the things he did, he was a cause-oriented person, and he never slept as far as his beliefs were concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know there was someone else who wanted to speak. Please come and introduce yourself. And then we're going to be hearing from people who are on the Zoom call.
My name is Steve Shiner. I know it's late, so I'll try to be short. I want to give a different perspective of David. I knew of David because I moved to Phoenix in 1966. I didn't know him well, hello, goodbye. But in 1989, as I'm reflecting here, interesting, as Frazer Ryan Goldberg started on 16th Street in Missouri, I opened my own practice just coincidentally, and I was officing with a local accountant below. And in 1989, my recollection was David was going through a battle of lung cancer. So even though I didn't know him, I reached out to him and invited him to lunch one day, could get to know him, and that started a lifelong friendship. And years later, when Frazer Ryan Goldberg moved to Central Avenue, just by happenstance, I moved to Central Avenue in the same building, a few floors below. Well, then David became my client. And there's an aspect you may not have heard of. I don't know how anyone who has 35 to 50 limited partnerships could keep track of everything. He was a massive, very intelligent, successful investor, as was his wife. The only thing is, he always came in like the 10th of April with all his information. But I enjoyed my time with David very much, and we became family friends. Unfortunately, we experienced the loss of Joan in 1999. And my wife and I decided, I'm sure David is having, the natural adjustment and difficulty of losing a spouse, so we invited him to go with us to Machu Picchu in Peru, and he went with us, and I think it was helpful to him. And then later in life, we had the pleasure of his family joining us in Israel in 2005 on a Jewish National Fund mission. Unfortunately, Joan wasn't with them, but we got to know his family then, and I think it was very special. David and I used to go out to lunch about once every 2 weeks. He liked to go out to lunch, and we did different places. I didn't remember that key lime pie or anything like that because we didn't have it at lunch, but anyway, but he was just a first-class guy. I feel honored to have known him, and I'll miss him.
Thank you so much. I think now we'll move to hearing from some of the people on Zoom. First, Jacob Frazer, David's grandson. Can you unmute, David? Jacob?
Okay, everyone can hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being there. And even though I'm not in person, I can feel the energy of Papa's presence through everyone's stories, and really touching to see how many people whose lives he's been a part of and touched. And yeah, one of my early memories of Papa was, maybe my earliest, was when he came to Milwaukee to visit after our grandmother Joan passed, and he gave my brother and I gifts to commemorate her life and her passing. And I remember him giving me a set of markers and colors and to color with, because to commemorate Joan's love of art and colors. And that moment really stuck with me, and I think it instilled this love of creativity, and it's really stuck with me forever, and it's always something I'll cherish. And our childhood bond was really cultivated through this shared love of sports, and whether we watched or we played, or there was so much joy in those moments. And there was another time where he came to watch me play basketball in middle school, and I had a pretty good game, I think, but after he said that my mid-range jump shot could use a bit of work, and so 2 weeks later I got a Steve Nash warm-up tutorial DVD set in the mail, and it actually helped my basketball game so much. And that kind of showed me, like, wow, he has such a good eye and discernment and good taste. And just little things like that he was so in tune with and aware, and so helpful. And the summers that he sent us to Camp Anytown to really show us a much different side of the human experience than we were used to in our suburban upbringing. It kind of showed how much he cared about exposing us to all walks of life, and learning to connect with all people from all backgrounds. The devotion he had to his values and his committed generosity to so many of these causes that he cared about, and he gave so much energy to things he believed in, and it's always inspiring to learn more and more about the people whose lives he's touched. And I reflect on these as reminders of the love and generosity he had for others. And visits with Papa were always cherished moments and huge highlights of my childhood. And yeah, the Passover Seders in Arizona were just like the best, such good memories. And he brought together so many amazing people, and all the tossing of the baseball in the backyard, and the Frisbee games, and the Thanksgiving Day football games, watching the Detroit Lions play, and the stories of childhood in Detroit with Frida, and all the ping pong matches. He taught us to seek joy in competition and play. And even through his 90s, he was a really hard competition. Like, you never knew if you could actually still beat him. So yeah, he was always a tough match in ping pong. And yeah, up until his final days. And he was a man that was so touched by beauty. I remember like he would listen to a piano piece, and it would almost move him to tears. And he never took down an offer for ice cream. And his charm and his wit and his grace and style was something that I always looked up to and aspired to attain as well. And yeah, just feel so much gratitude and luck to have had him in our lives and these decades with him. And even though we lived far away in most of my life, he was always there and around, and supported his grandchildren, and through all of our steps of life, helped us get through college, and yeah, really encouraged the best in us, and really encouraged us to be the best we could, and to make the most of our lives. And yeah, I think every time I smell a grapefruit, I really am like brought back to these really early childhood memories of picking grapefruit in his yard in Phoenix. And that the grapefruit kind of reminds me of his devotion, his eternal presence, the color of his smile, and his clothing choices, and the style that he lived with. And yeah, the door by door, may Papa's memory be cherished forever, and may he rest in eternal peace forever in our hearts, living through all of us that he touched. And yeah, it means so much to hear from everyone today. And yeah, I'll feel his energy and his presence through my entire life. And so thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'm so glad we could make that work. I hear there's one more person who wants to speak.
Yes, we're going to hear from David Mack, a friend.
Thank you.
Put this picture up.
My brother and I first met David Frazer as a friend of Doug's and Tom's in about 1970 or so, when we were both foolish young fellows. Unlike many adults, David was never dismissive or distant. He treated you like he knew what you could be rather than what you currently were. He was always kind and had a generous spirit. He was very interested, very encouraging. He didn't talk down or ignore young people, but he made a sincere effort to get to know us. David was always pleasant I remember his clear, piercing eyes and his great smile and friendly laugh. He was one of those rare people who saw you even though you were young and unfinished. He was genuinely interested in our lives and in our views. We last saw David this last February on his birthday. He seemed very content and very peaceful. David had a deep impact on my brother and me, and a great influence in our lives. And it's my honor to speak in his memory. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So You really covered everything, from personal to professional life. It was so clear that he was kind, patient, a listener, had great commitment. He was the moral compass of the firm. And I think most importantly, we learned that he liked ice cream, key lime pie, and custard. So I'd like to end before we move on to lunch with just a song, just a thought. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. And that light of David Frazer will never go out. That spark, that sunshine, it glows in all of us now. Thank you so much. And thank all of you who were watching from far away. Perhaps you want to send some of your memories in writing to the family. That would be lovely. So please come into the social hall. We'd like to offer some refreshments. Toda rabah, shalom.